Welcome to another Gamma Partner Artist Feature interview. Today we speak with Daniel Todd. We learn all about his past, creating as a child on MS Paint, right through to learning software, tinkering, being inspired by his granddad, minting his first NFTs on ETH, and now releasing his generative art on Bitcoin. From Digital Frontier, the backstory to that, all the way through to now, angles on screen, his love of pixels, SVGs, compressionism, and a little bit of 90s nostalgia. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. All right, so very excited to have Daniel Todd with us today. Daniel's a Gamma Partner artist who has released a couple of generative collections and a set of prints. Really excited to find out more about Daniel, I guess your origin story, when you first felt creative, or how you found yourself in generative art. But yeah, enough from me. Welcome, Daniel, and yeah, I'd love to hear more about you and how you got to this point.
Yeah, hi Brett, thanks for having us. Yeah, I guess probably the best way to start is like at the very, very beginning. When I was young, like going back some time, in the early 90s. So my dad was a soldier in the army. When he came out, he like most soldiers do, we really struggle to find work, that type of thing. So he went to university. He's quite a clever man, my dad, but he studied computer science at Newcastle University, and he would just start coming home with computers, and he'd be building them, and he'd be trying loads of different like new operating systems, and just like really exploring like computers, I guess. And what was, from my perspective, a very early age of computers, and I know they came like way before that, but how I remember them, it was very like archaic and quite antiquated. And then I think it was Windows 95, and he had Microsoft Paint, and I love to draw. I've always loved to draw. I'm more of like a sketcher and a doodler, and I like illustrate and do. I don't really think about it. There's not much thought into anything I do. This sounds really weird. I don't have a kind of an inner monologue. I don't have things that I'll have like a picture of a scenery or nothing. It just happens, and it's just all quite organic. So I would just sit and I would just doodle for hours, and I mean hours, on the computer. And then I remember seeing the famous painting Scream and trying to recopy that on Microsoft Paint. So I was sitting with a picture of it, like in a newspaper, and then I was sitting trying to redraw it with my hand. And ever since then, I think I've always been on a path of just trying to use like digital tools, computers, to help like influence and maybe push my boundaries. At school, I took art. Then I went to college, done graphic design. Then at university, I got on a course where we're doing media design and publishing. It's like quite a long name for a design course, but we're basically designing like page layouts for newspapers, magazines, big broadsheet stuff to small magazines, and then also doing illustrated like infographics, and that really fascinated us. That like just took us down a path where I don't think I'll ever I could have ever returned from once I started down it, because I've always had this like crazy obsession with how things work. I'm not like massively inventive in that sense. I just like to understand how things work, and then if I can recreate it from the ground up, it just like really makes us feel kind of happy about that. So yeah, just started making infographics, illustrating, drawing, applying information and data, these drawings, and then I come out of uni, and it was right around the massive financial crash, like 2008. So it was just, I came out 2007, but had like a bit of a year of just relaxing, chilling out, then that happened. Obviously, couldn't have timed it any worse, and there just wasn't a job around at all. There was nothing. Um, so, and I can't explain why I'd done this, but I just started just trying to pick up some freelance work, got some here and there, and then I got a job at a really small but local web design agency, and it was run by this guy who was an absolute madman. I can't explain him. He was just crazy. He was like if anybody who's seen can't get me words out. Only Fools and Horses. He was a proper like Del Boy character. Just do anything to make a quick buck. But yeah, so that's when I started getting really like actually involved in how code works and a little bit of understanding that. And then when I was there, one of my cousins worked for this like absolutely like Goliath like brand agencies called Chalk. They're a mix of like creative and brand management. And that side was the brand management, so we'd take like these huge clients, GlaxoSmithKline, Procter & Gamble, virtually every pharmaceutical company you can ever think of, and would manage all of their brands for them, all of the printed products. And when I worked for them, they were like in 2010, like heavily obsessed with automation and using software. And there was this software called Esco, by a Scandinavian company, and it was just so powerful. You could control like everything. But what we'd do is we'd get the creative brief in, would like do the rebrand, get all the images, do all the retouching, and then get like these just giant Excel documents with like all the wording, all the ingredients, all like the legal stuff, all the requirements about recycling, this, that, the other, and then would take like one logo, one set of like assets of the images, and then all these words, and then would just like redistribute it over every packaging size, every different variation of that product. And then we use this software, and I've just got obsessed with the software. Like I can't explain how much I loved it. So I would sit for hours and hours and build these new workflows and say, actually, if it does this, then we'll have a front end. The person can do this control. They can do this really powerful thing, and something that would normally take about 3 months to do, we're doing them in like 8 hours. We'd just hit run and just leave it, and then made the company a lot of money, saved the company a lot of money, but because of the size of the company, it was really easy to be anonymous. You could do the most like fantastic work ever, but you were just like, you're always essentially just like a cog in the machine. So anyway, I just left there and I just started looking for something more local where I could do work and get rewarded for it, and eventually ended up becoming like a user experience designer, like fully fledged. I didn't know back in 2010 what I was doing was kind of a combination of UX and a little bit of like creative design and stuff. But yeah, it was mainly around print and print agencies and stuff like that. I always think about the first day when I started at Chalk. They had these huge prints. They were like 3.6 meters by 1.6, like massive, these huge sheets, and it was just like all samples. You'd be looking at them under the microscope, and that's where you'd see like the print, the screen dots, and it's just like that's a whole other like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a world of technical like ability thing. People know stuff that's been handed down for like over 100 years, and it's pretty fascinating. When you try and explain it to people, when I was like in my early 20s and explain it, I could see them drifting off. You're talking about, the printing on your Pringles tube or something like that, and they just don't care. So quickly I learned I just had to bottle that up and keep it inside and think about it in my own way. But yeah, so I moved around, done a few jobs working in UX, and then one of my friends, really good friends, Phil, who he's had a fantastic career as a product designer. He ended up at Super Rare, and he introduced us to NFTs. Like I kind of heard about them, and I'd heard about Bitcoin a bit earlier than that, but never really took too much interest or like give it much thought. And he was like, oh, and the only thing, this sounds really superficial, that I thought I'm gonna actually give him a bit of time here, give him a bit of notice on it, because they were paying him phenomenal amounts of money, and I was like, well, these things can pay so much money just for a member of staff. you know, and it's like a JPEG. I thought of it like that because that's all the other like artifacts and files that you keep. I thought I'll take a look, and then that was it. I remember I made my first one, and never stopped. First one on ETH, IPFS sort of stuff. Didn't really give it that much thought as well like in the early days. I just thought I was storing these things on chain. I thought, you know, these are going to be preserved forever. And then, started getting involved in a few more like communities and started noticing a lot about on chain. And, there's a guy on Twitter, I say guy, I assume guy, called Grey Block. And he said, oh, you should mint this on chain. And I was like, oh, like I didn't know too much about it. He introduced us to Ethicax by, Did. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Get some grief for that. And then, yeah, I kind of realized the importance of what it is we're doing. We're storing these things forever. I like to think of it as a little bit of like graffiti. Like, we're putting these things on like the blockchain. We're storing them there. No one's technically asking us to do it. We're just doing it. We're putting our own mark on it. We're leaving an impression of ourselves, like, on this like digital monolith, which is only going to get bigger and continuously getting bigger every day, every minute. Yeah, I've just been really interested in it, and like I say, I've got this thing of being like really obsessed with how things work, and like small group we'll call it compressionism, like making things small, but like visually, physically, they're not small, but like the storage of them, it's like really small. And yeah, I've just fell in love with it, and then that led us on to creating animated SVGs, eventually onto generative art. First off, tried just combining SGVs with that, with a bit of code. I'm not really a coder as such, so I've heavily leaned on like AI tools, but it's all a learning curve. Like it's not, I don't think AI is bad. I think it's really useful, and if you use it in the right way, then to get the end result you want, then I think that's its purpose and that's its use. So yeah, just learning every day with it and grinding, putting something out new. Or I say every day. Recently, it's been a little bit tough because I've been really busy with work. But yeah, just it's really hard to think about that first instance of doing something digital to where I am now. Obviously, I was a small boy to being a man with a family and all that, and then it actually, I love it. I've always been interested in art. My granddad, you can just see one of his paintings here.
Oh, wow.
He and some of his pottery behind us as well. He was an absolute creative force. He was amazing. Like I say, going back when my dad came out of the army, he didn't have much work. He was always trying to like find a job, spend a lot of time around grandparents' houses, and my granddad would sit and do painting after painting, or he'd make a vase, or really creative. And I think he was my first sort of inspiration for anything. So actually, I think it's really cool. I've done a sort of like a small collaboration with him in my own way, and done some dithering with some unfinished paintings he done. He died quite a few years ago, but just last year, my grandma passed away, and we had like the whole clear out of the house, and it was actually really cathartic, like finding these just hundreds and hundreds of paintings and pictures and drawings that my granddad created. And I thought, actually, I'm gonna kind of honor his work, and I'll put my stamp on it and his stamp on it. Well, he was really into abstract and things being your interpretation of the world. So I kind of done that and then minted them on chain. So the fully on chain on ETH. I have thought about teleporting some of them over to Bitcoin as well. Just for, I don't know, I guess just for the health of having a bit of a diverse ecosystem. So yeah, I think that's where it started, the way I'm up to.
Yeah, that's quite the story. Wow. And it's funny because if you think about it, back when you were a child, and maybe we must be a similar vintage, doodling or learning to draw or mucking around using MS Paint. So you were creating digital art because that was early digital art, really. Obviously, computer art's been around for longer than that, like you said. All the way back then to now putting work on chain. Yeah, I'd love for you to dig in a little bit more about those early experiences and your dad, I guess, like dabbling with computers. And then, yeah, interestingly, what just came out at the end then, but I guess the inspiration from your granddad, you must have realized you were creative pretty early because of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't know. I don't know if it's just a little bit of genetics and DNA, something that's in my family. So on my dad's side of the family, you've got my granddad, who's this like wonderfully creative man. My grandma was an amazing musician. She played the piano. She could sing. She could do lots of things. She was really, really tactile. She could like create a lot of stuff out of nothing, like knit things and make stuff. So my dad was one of 8 kids during just off the back of the war. So there wasn't like, it was a bit of a tough time to have 8 children. Not a lot of work around. And they were just brilliant at making stuff, and they were of a generation where they made everything from scratch as well. So like absolutely everything growing up in our house, like that was cooked or made, was all made like it was like my dad would make it, or not my mum so much, but like little things, just watching people make stuff. I remember there's an Eddie Murphy sketch where he's talking about having McDonald's, and his mum like, no, there's McDonald's at home, and that was literally like my house. Like my dad was like, no, like you'd be in the supermarkets and you see things like frozen fish fingers, and he'd be like, I'll make them back when we get back home, and just something I think I've always like enjoyed making things. But on my mum's side of the family, my nana was she was a brilliant seamstress, and she would make like amazing clothes. She would make bedding, just all sorts of stuff. And I think it's just from very early on, I've seen a lot of people making things and just, using the side of yourself you don't always think about. And probably my nana or my grandma never thought of themselves as creative, because it wasn't the traditional like I'm making a painting or I'm, doing some pottery or whatever. But it's just something that's always been there, just like I wouldn't say an urge as such. Sometimes it does feel like that, but like it's just like something that I've always felt like I have to do. And it's also quite calming. There's nothing nicer than being stuck in a bit of creative flow, and then you look back and you're like, wow, I don't know how I got to this end point. I can't remember all these bits in between. I can't remember all the difficult things I learned, all this stuff I had to like figure out, realize did or didn't work to get here. But yeah, I think if I think about my dad as well, so seeing my dad's dyslexic as well, and so my dad really struggles with concentrating on things, and then seeing him just get stuck into computers and learning, connecting this thing up with that, going to all these computer fairs and old sports halls, picking hard drives up and then going and like soldering stuff into his computer and watching him figure out how things work that way. And then he was really quite strict on how you actually like stay safe on a computer as well. A lot of like OPSEC. I don't know if that's his kind of military background like coming in with, but he was very aware of that, like they're quite vulnerable as well, and you've got to be quite serious on how you protect yourself on them. So you just do some brilliant things that I've never really understood how he done it. He eventually started working in like networking, that sort of stuff, for oil rigs and keeping all the computers running, keeping things going, and doing some going all around the world doing that, working offshore. So he obviously had a really good career out of it, and he's managed to do some really good things. But my dad's not, he's not the kind of the creative inspiration, I wouldn't say, because he's not that expressive. So I don't think you could ever go, I'm going to make this look like an image I want it, or I want it to be like this thing I like to look at. It's always very functional with my dad. Everything has to work and everything has to make sense to him. So I'd probably say really creative inspiration He's my granddad. Me brother a lot as well. Growing up, my brother used to do, hopefully no one's listening, a lot of spray painting. And I just used to love going with him, looking at all the walls with all the like the spray paint, the different like colours, shapes, patterns. And I loved it. I'm trying to think of all my creative like inspirations. There's quite a few. My brother's actually a fantastic stonemason now. He's doing like amazing. I think that just absolutely blows my mind. You get this massive lump of stone and you just slowly knock away at it, and then you've got this fantastic sculpture that goes up in a church or on a building on the side of a heritage site, and it's going to be there for however many 100 years. I think that's brilliant, and kind of see a little bit of similarity, except we're not working with massive lumps of stone. We're working with, I guess the infinite possibilities of code, and we're trying to put them on chain and see what it looks like. Explore with creative outlets.
There's really interesting parallels with what your brother's doing and putting work on chain. Obviously, there's still, the physical work is still, in a sense, of course, more ephemeral, but it's really interesting. And the fact that your dad was so, I guess, steadfast in his OPSEC, that's also very prescient for the space in which we work in Web3, and obviously living and breathing and working on computers so much. So it sounds like there's like this confluence of all these, I guess, people and all of those stories that have kind of impacted you. I'd love for you to talk more about, so you got into software dev, but you were also doing like brand design and broadsheet design. How did those experiences, I guess, influence you as you started, up to now releasing work? Do you think that there are sort of seeds from those times that have grown into how you create these days?
Yeah, definitely. All the sort of like newspapery stuff and publishing kind of work. When we were doing it at university, it was all hand drawn at first before you go to the computer. There was a lot of like sketching, doodling, and easy 98% of it, depending on what you were doing, was going to be throwaway. And like that was the purpose of it. You start with a rough idea and you build it up and you build it up until you've got something really really useful, really powerful. So I'm thinking about more like infographics, the layout of design, a little bit different, but you'd still be, the intention was you'd be throwing most of it away, and then you'd move to the screen, you'd make it digital, you'd polish it, you'd have the finished output. In the work I do at the moment, like in software design, that's exactly the same. Like prototyping, working in prototyping tools like Figma, or just hand drawn everything. Idea, like 90% of this is going to be thrown away, and yeah, you've got to be really comfortable with that. You've got to be like, I guess, like at home with the idea that everything you do isn't going to be the finished product, and not everything's going to be perfect, and it's okay if things are rough. Like it's gonna. I hate this phrase, right? But it's gonna be almost like a living, breathing thing on the internet, or it's going to be something that people like log into and you can kind of forever change it. You're not like stuck with it. It's the idea that you should be constantly evolving. That's a little bit where I think about art as well. I think like be really happy with like, if I look back, the first thing I minted versus to now, it's quite nice. You can see an evolution. It's quite nice. You can see the path of growth, and not everything's like, this is my style and I'm going to like always have it. And that's not a bad thing either, don't get us wrong. Some people's styles are just so like visual, and you can see it from like a mile away, and you know that next time they're going to produce something, it's going to look not the same, but it's going to be like similar. It's going to be recognizable as them. I don't know if my art would be like that, because I've always wanted to kind of push a new area of exploration. I've always wanted to try just a new visual thing. There probably is similarities in colours and things being quite simple. I like things to just be stuff phrase necessary things only. Yeah. I don't know if I really answered that question there. I'm trying to think if I did.
No, you did. And it's interesting that you brought up style and how your style has evolved. Yeah, what did you first release on ETH? Because when we have a look at what you've put on Bitcoin, I don't know if it's the sort of 90s kid in you, but we've got these pixels and these very sort of 90s, I guess, or late 80s colors. So I don't know if that growing up in the 90s influenced how you're creating now, but I'm curious, I guess, the difference, like you said, the journey from when you first started creating to now. Is your work quite different? Would we see any cohesion across it?
I think you probably have to squint really hard to see the cohesion. My first mints, were kind of like what it was like. I think if I go back to what I said earlier, I've always been a doodler and I've always liked to just scribble things. So, I'd probably say I had about like a 5 to 6 year hiatus of not doing anything digital. And that was all around. So in 2014, I had a collapsed lung whilst I was cycling. And it really affected my health for quite some time. And then my son was born, and when he got to like nursery and stuff and he was coming back with his paintings, I guess the urge had sort of like been building up a little bit because he was doing a lot of drawing and he was doing a lot of stuff and I was encouraging that. I kept thinking like, oh, I'd love to get me pens and pencils out again. But I started taking photos of them, and I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, but I'm not one of these people who has like an inner monologue. I don't kind of verbally think out loud in my head. I don't hear a voice or nothing. I just had this thought of, I'm gonna draw on top of his drawings, like, when you see something in something else. And so yeah, he'd done this painting. He painted on a piece of paper, and it really reminded us. Just I quickly glanced at it of a fish that we used to keep in a fish tank, and it's called the Blackmoor. It's like a small little fish, comes in multiple colours, and so I just illustrated over the top of it, put it in Illustrator, drew over it, and then sent it to my friend Phil, because he's always like been a big encouragement of like anything creative. I says, "What do you think of this?" And he was like, "Go on, go mint it." And then he told us a few places to go. I think I chose Foundation in the end, and I put it on, and it's still sitting there unsold. I can't remember. I think it's not a lot of ETH, but I kind of just went on there. Like loads of his drawings, loads of his paintings. I'd find things in them and then put them on, and it was quite enjoyable. I sold a few. It was quite a nice way to like connect with them as well, and sit and get him to draw, and then and then I'd take it away and I'd do my thing and I'd show him. And he was quite young, so he couldn't really. I don't think he understood. Or he couldn't like verbalize, but yeah, that was my first thing. So it was very much of like an illustrative style. There was less around the idea of like using code. It was more just like, I'm just going to draw. I'm going to use this tool I know how to use really well. I guess the one thing is that is consistent is simplicity, like keeping everything just like really clean, really easy lines. Like not a lot of detail. There's probably some stuff I've done that was more where I'd be thinking about doing like information graphics. There was one I released again on Foundation. A lot of the stuff I'd done early was Foundation. It was like around koi carp. So with my partner, I used to have these jeans by a brand called Avisa, when they had like koi carp on the pockets, on the back pockets. One was gold and one was silver, and she said how she hated them. And I was like, and then there was something about them that I loved it because it was like really illustrative. So I thought, I'm just going to draw them, and then I tried animating them a little bit. In After Effects, I'm not proficient in that tool, so it was very rough and ready. But that was good, really good learning curve. I think that was one of my first steps towards like actually like using code to create, because you can use your code and prompts and stuff, and then I think that was the start of the penny dropping. and I like saying I can use this to actually create a digital artifact that I view as art. Yeah, like I say, there's no. I don't think there's a great deal apart from things still being simple, things being really like basic. I'm not an overly complex person, and I think that shows in me art. Although some of them you probably might think it looks complex, but especially this latest one. But it's essentially the code's doing the complex thing. I've just essentially given it the instruction. Um, yeah, I hope that answers your question on that as well.
No, it really did. Well, you know what? Because you've brought up the most recent one, let's have a look at it. It's called Angles on Screen, and then we can work backwards.
Yeah.
And perhaps whilst we look at it, tell us about the release, but also, I want to hear more about how, it sounds like you've always been a tinkerer and a learner, and so I think that would help a lot. But how did you get into creative coding? Like you were a software dev, you're obviously using code proficiently, but how did you get into generative art and creating in this style? You did mention earlier about how you were involved in the compressionist movement with that group, including did. So I know that there's bits and pieces of it in there, but yeah, I'd love to hear more about that story whilst you tell us about this collection as well.
Yeah, I'll just go back a little bit. So I'm not a software dev. I'm a user.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm a user experience designer. So I'm like, I'm used to code and I work with it and I tinker like exactly like you say. But I'm not. I wouldn't. This is probably where it's a little bit of like imposter syndrome. And I've always had that. I'm not overly confident in the sense that like I'll know how to do something. I could use. That's where AI's essentially help.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this release, I've kind of always, since the first day working back in 2010 at the brand agency and them making us look at things under a microscope and then seeing it like, I always found it really mind-boggling that like when you look at it so close and you can just see all these like dots lined up on top of each other and the sort of like, you don't see it until you look really close. These things are all coming in at like different angles. And then each one's a different color. So you've got the four color channels in print in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And then each dot's also a different size. And I thought it was like, wow, that's like really complex way of this thing that when you look at it, just looks like an image. You don't see it like on that broken down version unless you are to get a microscope, or if it's depending on the type of print, say if it's screen printing or less likely lithographic, but maybe flexographic, you'll see it if you get up real close. And I had this idea when I started exploring dithering, like over a year ago, really, or year and a half ago, thinking about like how dithering was like this like digital version of how things are made and how images are like created on screen, and it almost really reminded us of that. Like, you take a step back from a dithered image and it just looks like an image, if you're using like the maximum amount of colors, and then when you step every like move forward into it, you see like a pixel and more pixels, and then before you know it, it looks really abstract. And I love the idea of combining the two in that sort of like abstract form. And it took so many iterations to get to this one. Like I can't even explain how many, like a lot. An idea of like how these things can be like kind of overly complex and quite difficult to understand what it is until you take that step back. I love the idea of these like little pockets of isolation of just seeing like the kind of like an expression of it, or just taking it and making it something it was never meant to be, but kind of combining the two and bringing the two worlds together, I think was me goal. And I've kind of, since getting into compressionism a bit as well, I've kind of really fell in love a bit with the power of two and how every time it doubles, you know, you have this number and it's always like divisible by 2, and that's like really simple maths. But so the collection size was 256. The original one was 128. I thought I'll either double it or I'll half it. Either way, I'm like kind of I find the output number a little bit irrelevant, but I thought because of the potential variations in this one, I'll give it like a bigger collection size. I'm also not like, I don't know if you've seen, I'm not overly kind of keen on profiteering. No, it's crazy because I work for a bank now. Like I'll pretty much reinvest like a lot of money from these into other art, and I'll buy things that I like and things that are quite nice. So if I was to sell it out, and like a lot of the stuff's going to be like sold, some of it will be things like OCM, you know, these big like collection pieces, things that are like gonna hold and attain value for the future. I think that's also like really important, and if you can get your hands on that sort of stuff, then you're setting yourself up for like quite a nice future. But so yeah, I thought I'll just make it 256. When I said it was just over $30, but I think the price has gone up now because Bitcoin's had a bit of a rally. Always try and make things affordable. I think arts, I think all these high net worth things are really nice and super important for art and how art history is made, but also think it should be affordable. You know, I had like really humble beginnings, and it would it wouldn't really like reflect well on myself if I was trying to sell these things that are for a lot more money than they need to be. Like I say, it would still be a lot of money if I was to sell it out. So Angles on Screen basically is trying to combine how you kind of make images together. Like I was thinking, a print version and then a digital version. Really really interested in dithering, and I kind of, as much as I try and read how it works, I kind of really fully understand it, and I love that as well. I love that like you can just add anything to a matrix, a dither matrix, or like a dither algorithm, and it produces this image. I think it's like absolutely fascinating. And then having like that sort of like combination of how like images are destroyed together in this one piece, and then the angle at which all the dots are coming in, it's like usually standard. You can change them depending on the image, depending if you want things to look like really, really different. And so I thought I'll just give it like 360 wheel, and each dot comes out at a different angle. And then instead of going with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, I've got the code to kind of just like produce any hex code available, and then out of all the mixed blend modes that you can have in screens and making things overlay, I just applied all of them, so it'll randomly select from them all. That's how some come out darker, some are lighter. Just try to give it a lot of variation, and then each dot as well, like think of line dash array, so like each one of them moves across the screen, so you get that constant animation. And that there's some of them where you get the Mori patterns, where like it shows as a circle, and then it moves, and then it shows as a circle again later on. I absolutely love those ones. Also the ones that are slightly a bit more abstract and are bigger squares and bigger pixels. Again, I kind of have a bit of a thing for them. I think it leaves it up to the viewer to decide what they think it could be, what it looks like, what the shape is. Pretty much. I think all I've got to say really about Angles on Screen. I am really proud of it. It's probably one of my most complex pieces of work. It wouldn't have been achievable if it wasn't for the help of a few people, like on my journey as well. I think Did, especially one of them, if it wasn't for his tools, his like dither algorithm, I probably wouldn't have really explored it too much, but it makes it really easy to explore, to click new dithering methods and play around with how big the pixels are, how many colors you want. And that's where I got offset from as well, the print that I released. So this came from a really simple, essentially a screen grab. an ETH NFT I made. So what you see there, that is like a standard CMYK Mori pattern. Each angle's at the same thing. But what I was thinking when I was doing it, I was like, actually, I would love the idea of just taking this into Dither and then 4 colors and then just hitting randomize every time and see what comes up. And then when I get a color pattern I like, just click through the different patterns. And then I think that file size came out at like 2 kilobytes or something. And I love the idea that you've got something quite vibrant, and I know it's not, but to me, I don't know if this is maybe it's on the spectrum, but to me, I feel like it's moving, even though I know it's not. I really like things that make you, well, to me anyways, I feel like there's a bit of movement in there. You can imagine it like each thing moving, having its own path, going its own way.
Oh, I completely agree. I can see that as well. I think that that's what makes still images like this quite special. It's interesting. It may or may not have been on purpose, but in this one, in offset and then in angles on screen, then afterwards we'll have a look at Digital Frontier. But particularly this one and angles on screen, the artwork is in the middle and you get this nice border around it. Was that an artistic choice? Did that hark back to when you used to kind of create designs or have to do any of that sort of thing?
It did, yeah. So a lot of the time, doing like these page layouts, you'd be given an area of a page, and then you'd mask it out, and you'd have this area, and you'd go, "This is my canvas." Like we're all sharing the same canvas, but this bit's mine, and then you'd like sort of frame it, and that essentially is I don't know. You'd quite often step back and look at them and think, it's like a small work of art. And obviously, I think everything, I don't know, not everybody might agree with this opinion, but I think everything's art. Like, you've just got to understand that somebody's made that. Somebody has spent the time to make this thing, whatever it is, because everything man-made has been made by someone, and like, they've had to have imagined it, they've had to have created it from something. But yeah, I would look at these little things and go, to like, kind of imagine. I quite often used to think of like, imagine like an art gallery just full of like information graphics just like lined up, and I think how kind of fruity might that look. But yeah, so I've always kind of liked the idea of clean space, like a lot of space around things. Sometimes if something's a little bit too noisy for me, I kind of really struggle to enjoy it. So yeah, I always try and, for myself, make it for myself first, and then I'll see if other people like it, then great.
For sure. And then on that note, let's pull up Digital Frontier, which was your Genesis release on Bitcoin. There's some parallels, there's some cohesion with angles on screen, but quite different. I perhaps it's just me, but it seems to be a little bit faster. There's like more of that black negative space, brighter neon kind of colors. But yeah, it's a fascinating drop. And yeah, really well received, as has angles on the screen.
The origins for this one, believe it or not, go back like quite some time. Probably to when I first started making on-chain art. So my first few pieces. So I was exploring like file size, the best methods for getting smaller file sizes, and everything was kind of pointing towards SVG animations. I don't know why, but at the time I was like, if I'm going to make something and put on chain, I wanted to kind of add a bit more value than my normal stuff. So I thought, right, I'm going to learn how to animate these things. I'm going to do it. It turned out it was like fairly simple in the sense of a language I was comfortable with in CSS. And there's quite a few of them when I look back, I think, that could actually easily be a generative project, or, like if I only had knew what I know now back then, it probably would have been, but, like these things are like part of your path and part of your journey. So this one, this is where yeah, I probably out myself as a bit of a nerd, but I loved the film Tron as a kid. I remember seeing
Yeah.
it, and just like I fell in love with how it looked. The neon colors, the on this like black background. Obviously, that was like a mimic of like arcade games, and obviously,
Yeah.
with the age growing up, I loved going to the arcade. I loved playing them. I loved like the first consoles we had in the house. You know, it was just it seemed like a mind-boggling time, and like um I didn't have to go all the way to the seafront because the way I live, that's where the arcades were
Yeah.
to do these things, or just it was like there in my house. But yeah, I loved it. And then um, I can't remember when it came out, but when Tron Legacy came out, that opening monologue from I'm really bad at remembering names, but the main character when he's talking about the digital frontier and like how he got in and that I don't know why, but it's like really like burned in my memory. And I thought like I got some help from like another like artist in the compressionist space called Azerty Betamax, and he just like I said, oh, I'd really like to do something, but I just don't know where to start. And he just sent us a file, and then from there it was like, oh, I just do it, add this script in, and I add it in, and I keep adding, and I'll play around until something works. So what you're looking at there is each one is an SVG, and it's I can't remember how many bars, but there's so many bars across, and then each one has a stroke dash array, and then we're added in an SVG filter, which kind of turns everything into just tiles. And so each one of them like kind of overlaps, and I don't know actually how that happened because there's no like multiply on any of them colors or anything, so you get bits where it overlaps and you can see two colors and you can see things like kind of interplay with each other and you get a mixture of colors. So yeah, so now when I created the first one, I thought about it and I was like, oh, this feels like, that digital frontier. Like I've got in, I can use the code, I can use that language that I don't fully understand, but like I can use it to help create like a vast array of things that are like just from one image, it can turn them into many. So yeah, and obviously previously I'd done extensive amount of SVG animations and tried to explore some really complex versions of them. And for this came from an idea where I used this FE tile filter and FE flood in SVG, and it was like, oh, finally I can like recreate this as like almost looking like a pixel without having to redraw every pixel, without having to have everything as a pixel. And that was like, I guess that was like the real like switch in my head. Like I say, I kind of have like a bit of a love for like the pixels and how the pixels look and how they work, and you move in and zoom out and you see different things, and I just find it like really fascinating. So yeah, I guess the kind of like this one was like grounded in a lot of learnings. It was just like it's quite an early in for me. It feels like now when I look back, like quite an early drop, and honestly, I'm still blown away that how quickly it sold out. Like I accidentally released it. I was just on. I remember I was on Gamma, and I was like, oh, so I was like, do I have to manually like launch it? And I just pressed it, and the next thing I knew, one was gone. I was like, what? How did that happen? Like someone must have been sitting waiting, and which I can't fathom. I can't wrap my head around it that somebody would be waiting for us to release something, which just feels really special. I'm like so proud of this drop. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, so do I. I remember when it went live, and I remember, I was in your DMs and we were working together to get you onto Bitcoin, and this was pre being a partner artist, so it's so exciting that you're part of the partner program as well. Love for you, yeah, to talk about, like you said, using AI as part of your learning and to help you with your coding. How do you find it as a tool, and how's that been for you as an artist, and that sort of evolution of using AI and other various like tooling available?
Um, it's a really strange dichotomy. I've got a real love-hate relationship with it. Like, I absolutely love how it can just go, oh, this is a problem you've got. Here's the answer. But because I really struggle to get words out on, like, write them down, there's something in my brain where it just doesn't always connect. I have a really tough time sometimes of like trying to explain what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fascinating as well. Like, sometimes how it interprets what I'm trying to interpret as my own words, and then the result that comes out. Sometimes you're like, no, that's not it. And then there's obviously the issues. Like, obviously, sometimes it just can't. It gets stuck in a loop, and you have to kind of start afresh, and that can kind of feel a bit frustrating with that. It's also quite refreshing in the sense of like, right, both of us are getting it wrong. Like, I'm getting it wrong, you're getting it wrong. Let's kind of go away. Sometimes I might leave something for a couple of days and then come back with a fresh kind of like way of asking it for something or approach, and that probably speaks of me age. Like, I bet there's younger people out there who can just manipulate it to give them everything they want in like in one prompt. And but yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like taking time on things. I do find it fascinating how it like it's kind of really quick, and it's that speed means that everything moves so much faster, like on the internet. I think growing up we used to have like subcultures that would like stick around for years, and I just don't think that's going to be a thing anymore. I think everybody's going to be just into the own thing that they like in ChatGPT or whatever model, whichever software. That's going to be the thing that like people talk about, people are relying on. They don't like, I don't know, they don't go to a single source for like music or anything. They can ask it to find them what they want, and then they go there. It's like, I think it's pretty cool, but also quite scary being a parent. I wonder, like, so I think my son's into football, but depending where you are, soccer, and he's getting really good. He genuinely is getting really good, but he's also like just really clever. I can't explain how clever he is, but it's phenomenal. He remembers everything, like without exception, and I just wonder like how that'll affect him, like, because at the moment they don't have access to it, they don't have access to anything like that, and it makes him work, and that's a good thing. And then I think when you have this thing that does all the thinking for you, I don't know how that's going to play out in the future. I do wonder.
It's a crazy thought. I too am a parent. We do call it soccer here, but I knew that, being from Newcastle, you're what football meant, Alan Shearer country up there. But I don't know if they're your side or your son's side, but yeah, it is crazy. But I suppose at the same time, it's our job as parents and educators and adults to, like you said, teach the younger generations or use these things as tools and still have some independent thought, because I think that, like you have created with your various collections and pieces, you still drove that. You came up with the concept. You still curated it. You decided what it was going to look like. I suppose, that's quite an important part of it for you.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this is painful to say, especially on a recorded thing. But my team's Man United right now.
Oh, so, right. Yeah.
My son, he's into Man City because they're the team that's winning, and all the kids are wearing Haaland tops and that kind of thing. And but we do go to Newcastle games. I'm quite it's not. I don't see it as being such a tribalist type of thing. I think football's something you enjoy or you don't, and if you do, go and see it live. It's great, interacting with the crowds and stuff. We've been to see them a few times and he loves it. He really does love it. But But yeah, it is. It's about what you want out of it and what you want it to do for you. If you want it to do all your thinking for you, it will. But if you want it to help create something unique, you can definitely do that. I know there's like, I think probably people get sick of it because there's so much stuff that looks the same out there because of AI, and I guess that's just because people will accept the output it gives them, and they don't go into it too much because they want everything now. And it's like, I think that's probably an issue with like the modern generations. They want everything now, and like it can give them everything now, but that comes at the cost of like individuality, or creating a style, or something that's unique. And I know that's really generalist because there's a lot of people who aren't like that. There's a lot of artists who do some really unique stuff with it, and like everything's fully prompted outputs and stuff. And I think that I find that's more fascinating, that you're able to like use it to get this thing that's actually that's your style, and that's how you want it to look, and but you've used the tool to do that. It's just when you see like it almost looks like copy paste. Somebody's seen an image of something that sold really well, so they'll use AI to recreate that in a kind of, I don't know, a cheaper version. That might sound quite elitist, but they do that, and then you get spammed with it, and then it's everywhere, and it's minted on every platform you can imagine. And I think that's the damaging part of it, really. I kind of like to use it to just almost like a guide when I'm like I'm really struggling with the code and I can't understand things. So Pavel I showed him one of the files. I was like, "Is this ready to go on? I'm really not sure. Like I can't fully understand it." And he's like, "Oh no, you need to use a seeded PRNG." And I was like, "Okay, what's that?" So we'll go to ChatGPT, and then I'm like, "So how do I use that to create this?" And then it's like it's more of a tool to aid you to get to the end point. If I had to do that by myself, that would have took us about 6 months. Like, not joking. It's how I struggle to read things. I've got to see people do it. But if I can't get a video of somebody doing it and showing us how it's done and talking us through, like, then I'm not going to get there. Like, it'll take us a long time. So, it's really powerful for me. Like, so powerful, but yeah, I do think my son, because he he likes the quick wins. God knows what my daughter will be like. But when they get to it, I just wonder how it's going to evolve and how they're going to use it, and what does the job look like in the future with it? Because we already talking at my place how we're going to use it to synthesize like research, and like we have been doing it for a while, but now the business is catching on, and they're saying like, okay, how do we do it like en masse? And it's just, I'm actually really excited about the future of it. I'm just also a bit scared.
I think that's totally natural. Let's stay positive and optimistic. Daniel, we're coming up to an hour, so it's probably a great time to wrap up there, but it's been an absolute pleasure to go on this deeper dive with you, and find out more about you and learn about your past and how you got to this point, and have a good look at what you've put out onto Bitcoin. Obviously, for people who watch this, go and check out Angles on the Screen. It's still minting, but also have a look at his other collections. But Daniel, really looking forward to everything else that you do bring to Bitcoin, and we're proud that you're a partner artist with us at Gamma.
Yeah, I'm really proud as well. I'm really happy about that. I feel like it's been a nice trajectory. Like just keep doing my thing and getting recognition here and there, and then finding myself a partner artist feels like quite an achievement, especially with Gamma. I love the platform. I love the design of it. I think it's really smart. I really like it. I've just realised as well, I've done this full interview with me washing pile behind us.
We're all humans. It's all good. That is totally okay. But Daniel, no, really, truly, thanks for spending the time, and thanks for telling us more about yourself and your art.
It's been great. Thanks, Brett.